Alright, welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. .com, actually. Now we'll get to some related content anyway. So I've reclaimed the domain name, sort of, that was for the town website when I lived in Mendham, blah, 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 blah. And so now it's going to be a hub, so to speak, for old and newer content, kind of, well, an index of some kind. Yeah, so anyway, just letting you know that not that it matters, not that you need it for any reason. If you already know about Do Not God and Ethylism.com, then that covers most of that philosophy stuff. But some of the other stuff I do, the physics and some of the other political crap, will be more accessible through that hub, one would imagine, eventually. And we'll see what Google does, see if it'll index it. It's funny that there's no residual. They had really destroyed, everything on all my domain names. Get no traffic from any search engine. And there are web pages on all the domain names, and there's content, but yes, none of it's apparently, in Google's opinion, relevant to any subject on Earth. But anyway, you don't need traffic noise. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Anyway, so, yes, on to the video. So, this week's video was more or less dealing with the fact that this subject of, what is the nature of existence is just ruined by having to have a bunch of psychology conversations. About kind of the fake and phony narratives by which people live their life, like somehow it's important how many home runs some moron hits, or whether somebody's hair dye is dripping down their face, or all the little bullshit that occupies people's notice and attention. And they really don't pay any attention to the fact that they're living in a biosphere where gazillions of animals with neurologically active brains are going through all kinds of life trauma and are trapped in burning buildings, for example, or stuck in earthquake-crushed houses, and all kinds of tragedies and catastrophes that we don't come to the rescue. We don't even notice the problem. The city's on fire and we just don't care, because we're too distracted by just living for the whatever candy we can collect and lick, and that's about it. So it's all just a conversation about psychology because people aren't smart enough. They aren't brain-abled enough to separate their psychological crap, me wanty, me hungry, me horny, from I have to think and make important decisions and make important statements about reality. And they can't do this philosophy thing without injecting a bunch of psychological, fairy tale, happily ever after, silver linings, hope kind of crap into the conversation. A bunch of rationalizations and cheap justifications, because they just want to deal with the reality. So it's sort of like the meat eaters, I'm sure they can intellectually understand that, well, it'd be so much better if I didn't have to torture and kill things. That if bananas, for example, tasted like filet mignon or something, that somehow I got the same gratification out of decimating elements of the biosphere that do not endure any consequence, where it's irrelevant and meaningless whether they survive another 3 months or not. Whether the fruit I pick it or whether it falls off the tree, don't matter. But anyway, so yeah, that's a dilemma. But it's in the context of, as stated, that for the purpose of getting to an end where people are not fixated on some notion that the future must exist, the future full of people doing exactly the same bullshit as the people are doing now, and there's no requirement that that be the reality. They're certainly not distracted by that as a mission. And in the civilized countries, they had already decided to go extinct. And just as a practical fact, their children were being raised, and people would get to maturation without feeling any necessity to repopulate the world. And so they were busy doing something besides egg laying. And they weren't laying sufficient eggs to replace their population, and which is a death sentence in a sense. It's a voluntary genocide, and it really didn't worry anybody. The people doing it weren't even thinking about that. Maybe if somebody told them, "Oh, you're causing the extinction of the human race," then maybe they'd start to panic and say, "Oh, I better do something. I better pay somebody to have some kids," or some kind of bullshit like that. And that's what the cultures are actually doing, is paying people to create burdens that somebody else has to pay for, because they have so many infrastructure systems that are dependent on growing population, and they all want their housing prices to keep increasing. They want to keep their wealth growing, and the only way they can do that is to create more slaves and morons, to borrow the money to create their wealth. So it's all quite insidious. And that we were actually one before the word antinatalism was spoken, I guess, in public conversation of any kind, or relevant, meaningful spaces on the internet. In one sense, the battle had already been won, and now we're losing it. So the more we talk, the more we're losing, but it's not our fault. It's not the conversation's fault. It's the fault of silly policies where the behavior of the third world has now been embraced and endorsed, and we all should be third worlders and live in a third world culture where people recklessly reproduce and make obligations and problems that no infrastructure could ever take care of, because there's way too many liabilities and way too few assets. And so it's just the definition of break your culture. This is how to do it. Anyway, and sadly, it's the liberal cause. The cause that was supposed to get the rich. we were supposed to create fairness, and instead they decided to become obsessed with people who want to be a squirrel, and a squirrel that has sex with a hamster. Instead those people who have those needs, and they want to become obsessed with that, and that somehow poor people can't help being assholes, and criminals can't help bashing people over the head, and all that kind of nonsense. Anyway, sorry, to me it's just nonsense. It's just too ridiculous to pretend that the minor the minor inconvenience that you have to satisfy for a culture to survive, that you don't bash other people over the head and steal their money, it's just too simple. And shoplifting, all the rest, these are not minor crimes. These are gigantic liabilities to running infrastructure. If nobody can feel safe, then we're going to have to waste all our money on barred windows and drones and guns and all that other crap. And there won't be any money to grow food or do any of the other stuff that might be important. So anyway, didn't really mean to make a political type statement, but I'm just saying I the self-destruction of the Democratic Party just amazes me. They were on the verge of owning the world, and they threw it away. They just threw it away on bullshit. You know, just bullshit. All right, so there's not much you can say. Threw it away. Got Piro'd, did a Piro, nonsense, illogical nonsense. Just so bad. Anyway, so, in the context, like I'm just saying, it is kind of ironic, that we were on the verge of victory and now we're having to fight some other war to maintain that victory, even though the victory wasn't really, it wasn't an honest victory. So, I guess we could argue, well, it's better to have a nice, honest demise in the human race, not an incidental one that just happened to happen because people are selfish bastards and, and they decided that having kids was too much of a liability, too much of an inconvenience. They had better things to do with their life, more fun things to do than, wipe little poo butts and, snotty noses and have arguments with teenagers about how they're ruining their life and all that crap. Yeah. All right. So philosophically, like I said, you don't need much of exposure. So the real argument is you kind of force a person to do some introspection and do some rational, like I said, you don't need much of an education to understand evolution is a thing, okay? Our biology is a thing. It's a real concept. The fact that we are wasting, at least 50% of our national income on crap, sports and frou-frou and fra-fra and, holiday parties and, just absolute nonsense. That we're functioning far below our capacity, because of the silly and trivial wastes that go on that are subsidized, by the cultural rules and all of that crap. And just realizing that you're a human being, you're this biological machine, and you have these impulses, you have to control them. You can't just shit anywhere you want or piss anywhere you want or pick any fruit that you want. You have to, play by the rules and blah, blah, blah. And part of the rule of understanding is that your existence is not for free, and there's huge amounts of impact for every action. There is reaction in the world, and most of the time it's just an absolute fact that if you get to wear the gold medal, somebody else isn't wearing it, and now their life sucks. And, these are tragic and difficult facts of life, and they are ones that give one pause to saying, why would I inject somebody else into this? Now, in that context, there's this whole big, huge argument where, people are arrogantly saying life is good, life is fun, life is all this shit, and they haven't died yet. They haven't gone through one of the biggest parts of being alive, which is being forced to become dead, and how it can be very nasty and unpleasant, that process of becoming dead. That you're psychologically not going to be ready for it unless I start driving nails into your head or, some other part, cause you some real hard grief and pain and suffering, then you'll be ready to jump into traffic. But if not, you're still going to be writing your story. And you're still going to be saying, I got some editing to do. I got some stuff to do to this book. I'm not finished writing it yet. It's not complete. And it'll bug the hell out of you that reality is saying you have to die. It's going to be very frustrating and unpleasant. It's really kind of ridiculous to say life is worth living when you really haven't done what living is, which is, a big part of it is, unfortunately, unpleasantly dying. And so it's just almost ridiculous that people would arrogantly say they know they're worth it. They know their story is so important that it's okay to crush a few other animals. And it's not just a few, right? For every, blissful little human adventure, there is a blood footprint that's just gigantic in terms of the biosphere. Even creating the oxygen you breathe is made out of so many tragedies. And these are they're just absolute facts. There's no way to sugarcoat them with some fable or fairy tale. The biosphere is a cruel place. The DNA model of evolution is cruel. It's just, yes, it's too stupid to do it on purpose, but it's just so obnoxiously bad in terms of just using, killing 999 out of 1,000 turtles or octopuses or whatever you want to pick to perfect the DNA. Elephant seals. There's lots of mammals in the same position, where the dominant male gets everything and all the rest of the seals are just shark food. They're just there to basically feed the sharks so the sharks don't go after the big fat guy with all the money. These are all really bad systems, really harsh and brutal conditions, and to defend it is to defend slavery, is to defend the worst kind of dictatorship, is to defend Nazis. It's to defend just the worst of human imagination and belief. It's just so bad. And so really it's not a conversation to have as a smart person, because their argument is so simple, and really all it is getting past people's psychological barriers. And I would put, their religions and their spirituality and their other nonsense, that's just psychobabble. It doesn't have anything to do with any kind of rational conversation about reality. It just has to do with their desire to live in a world that justifies and defends their silly, fucktarded dance culture. Their their belief that they're doing something important because they can move their feet in a funny little way. It's really just so bad. All right, anyway, sort of what the video's about. I think, that was pretty much somewhere in the video there's some sort of narrative on that kind of subject. But anyway, so we better play it and get on with it and whatnot. So this is, so that's wasted time. But anyway, that's the website as it is now. It'll evolve into something, like I said, with links and more narrative detail about what I was trying to do, what I did, what I accomplished, what I didn't accomplish, that kind of stuff, and these different fights I've had through my existence on the internet. Maybe someday I'll go through the stuff before the internet. But time will tell. And really the only thing that's important now is this, the history isn't so important. And the future is, so I will try to tend to keep my focus on stuff more relevant to moving forward. Keep my eye on the prize, as they say. Higher price to make anything worth. Nothing's valuable enough to be worth redoing that shit over and over. Yes, that's just a simple statement about, just all you have to do is have some of those experiences, and you're going to be tempered. You're going to be, you're going to be changed in terms of your structure and your capacity to accept, silly exaggerations about how charming and wonderful life is once you've gone through a few episodes. If you've been on the edge of the building ready to jump, it's you're gonna you might say, okay, I get this I want to live thing, but I don't get the big lie that this is anything other than a burden. Are not involved in the struggle of life, okay? They're just doing a chemistry experiment. So just making the distinction between, people think there's all this living stuff on Earth, but, the whole first billion years of life on Earth is not about sentient organisms writing narratives and stories about how they feel and what they endured, because they're just not capable. That's like a car writing a narrative. And we can write it for the car. We can see, I even use that as an example, we could see a car and it could have a smiley face painted on it or something, give it a little personality, and we can start thinking of it as a thing that does have a story to tell. Like Disney's made plenty of talking car movies, right? I mean, so you can turn anything into a living thing that matters, and give it a personality. You can have your favorite knife because you had it when you were a kid and it's knifey, You could turn anything into a friend or a comrade, and, people had names for their guns, in the war. Miraculous, it's just higher technology. Right, so that's all. There's nothing distinguishing us from the bug existence except that we've added some radar and different features, Still just a boat floating in the water for no good reason. And yes, we've added all this extra crap to it, being human. And then all the other, kind of massive amount of extra features that come with education. And that's again, sort of the ironic part is, here we're at the 21st century and people really aren't really appreciating the value of, that part of being human, the smart part. And now there's so much information to collect that now people become experts on bubblegum history. Like the little comics there's some guy, right, who's collected every one of them, found every one of them, read every one of them, is an expert on them. So they, instead of doing this thing where we're creating a pyramid of information where all the important stuff is in this little top and all of the unimportant stuff is in the bottom, and you can make a distinction, we're just turning it into a blob of mixed crap where really stupid information of no value is in this, is mixed with information of intensely important value. And so it's very poorly organized, our intelligence. So very smart people can be really fucking dumb. I mean, people who have a lot of information can be knowledge poor, because what they have information about is shit that doesn't matter. Stories, and they're just looking for the little heroic moments, for their little hero to do their little... Right, it's just soap opera bullshit, really. I mean, all that, the sports thing is just so, it's kind of embarrassing, I think, for men, because they've basically acknowledged they're just watching a soap opera. Come on. They're like my grandmother would, always busy working, doing stuff, but she had to watch her little soap opera story every afternoon. It was just, at least she would crochet or knit or do something productive while she was doing it. But it was just so funny that this was, her entertainment was this, visceral living, some sort of interesting life, having an affair with Dr. Kildare. It's some kind of, and it was, but then, sports is just the same thing. It's just some continuing little narrative about these stupid little characters, and you like one of them, and you want him to win, and it's just so, trivially, obviously psychological, and there's just absolutely no value or merit to this storytelling. It's not going to make you a smarter or better person, a more capable, a competent person. It's just such useless mush. And yet it's, I don't know, it's almost like the focus of human existence is this stupid international gameplay. Who can jump the highest? Who cares? I mean, why do you care who could jump the highest? Oh, what a waste. People are just so caught up in, what the characters are saying to each other that they don't notice. So I was just talking about kind of the idea of the plot flaws in life are easy to see. The stuff out of place, so I kind of make an analogy. You're watching some old Western and there's a neon sign on the bar or something, something totally just, no, they didn't have neon signs back then. And there's a ton of that in our existence, a ton of these little signs that say, this isn't right, this plot is flawed, blah, blah, blah. All of the unfairness, all of the bullshit. And, people are just so busy with their little life that they're not paying any attention to the scenery. And it's way out of place. Find the way to live that's the good life. And how are they going to impose that on some new victim when they couldn't achieve it? Yeah, so people who really aren't living, who haven't even figured out how to live. So first they're young and stupid, and on top of that, a lot of them have already failed at doing simple things like controlling their weight, or not getting into car wrecks, or not doing some other stupid thing, and yet they're having kids. You've barely figured out how to drive safely and you're having kids. I mean, it's just so bad. It's just so bad. The disconnect, the plot flaw of ignorant, immature jackasses being the 99% of the time the caretaker for the precious child. Wrong, bad idea. Basically say, look, everybody, every kid, every person 18 years old, if you haven't been a menace, that is, you're not. So I was just talking about like simple solutions, the way society should be thinking is, how do we do this? We don't like punishing people. We don't like hitting them with a stick and saying, no, stop doing that. So then, yes, you can make carrots and you can make them cost effectively and rationally, and understanding that, how much the criminals cost, the liability of people who aren't going to be productive. They're not going to do anything for society. They're not going to they're never going to get a job where they're doing something socially constructive, and they're blah, 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 and they're just going to be blights and parasites, and then they're going to create kids that society's going to have to pay for. And there's going to be a whole industry created, of throwing these kids into foster care, which is, basically mercenary parents, doing it for the money. Another really bad thing. You don't want people raising kids for the money. Just so bad. When you could do the simpler fix, which is just reward people for not being assholes. So if a kid knows from day one that he's going to get a big bonus allowance, not a quarter or 50 cents, but $10,000 if he doesn't fuck up, if he can get to his 18th birthday without being a social menace, then he's going to have at least that big ball of pause is going to be there every time somebody suggests, well, let's go break into blah and let's go, and then they're going to know, well, maybe I don't want to do that. That would be dumb. And so, you use the carrot instead of the stick. And, but no, you can't even start that conversation, let alone have it. So, no point. It either smells good or it smells bad. You look at a woman, she's either fuckable or unfuckable. All right, this is the sad truth of our existence. And, I'm not saying everybody is me. It has the same psychological maturation through life, but it's a sad fact that's the substance of my existence was these categories and this idea of people were put into categories based on their utility, and it was it's not menacing, but it's malicious, and almost in a sense, it's such a degrade and an unfairness to their existence and their story and their narrative and all of that crap. But it was just that obvious, in terms of your selfish impulses, that, yeah, well, I know my story's important. I'm not too sure about theirs. So it was sort of easy to do. And that's all, and intelligence gives you some power to combat that instinct. But it's still not going to make the unfuckable fuckable, in a sense. It's still not going to change how you do derive interest and pleasure out of your interactions with other people, because the fact is you still only need this, whatever this is, okay? And knowing better isn't going to make you need something else. You still have the same, the currency, the fact that they have the apples that you want, okay, the whatever the thing is, you can't change that fact. And you can't change the fact that they can't turn whatever rocks into apples, So you can't just imagine your way out of your natural tendency to be extremely unfair. Probably that moment, my brain got it and said, this isn't for free, and this is, and it took what, and that's all you need, really, is once you understand, oh, this is expensive, I'm paying a price, and then you figure out other people are paying a price, then you figure out the biosphere is paying a price. It just becomes obvious that, oh, well, slow down, don't get me involved in any of this, making more of this or endorsing any of this, because I'm not sure this is paying off at all. I certainly I don't want you to confuse my confusion, okay, with any kind of statement that yeah, everything's just fine, let's make more, let's keep going, blah blah blah. No, I'm not really for it. I can't say I didn't have enough articulate philosophical knowledge to be able to say I'm against it, but I certainly wasn't for it. And that's all you really need, is not for it, because then people's selfishness will take over, and you win. Nah, paused. Yeah, I guess I paused. Well, that's pretty impressive. I'm conscious, I'm alive. But it doesn't innately do anything. Right, so that's just more of the argument that it's, look, we're just bugs, okay? And yes, we're doing this much more elaborate thing, this amazing thing, this, you could almost call it a magnificent construction of electricity and chemistry that we can synthesize something like being alive and conscious and thinking and feeling. It's amazing. Go from flatworm to that. It's miraculous. Okay. But yeah, no, it's understandable. And that's what DNA molecules can do if you give them hundreds of millions of years of a stable environment, blah, 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 blah. But we do also know that, it just doesn't happen. It's really rare. We have won the lottery with an awful lot of zeros after it in terms of the odds of winning. And because we won, we just think, oh yeah, this is just something that poofs. It don't happen that way. And that's more the stuff where you really have to have some knowledge of how it happened here on Earth to understand how unlikely it is it's going to happen anywhere else. Just because of all of the one-time events, where the chemistry sat around for 4 billion years and it didn't do a damn thing. And that's the more likely. outcome. And and where's the human, doing the let's be philosophers, not only living things but philosophical things. We're a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of the biosphere, right? So it's really not something DNA molecules like doing. It was creating philosopher animals. No, it likes the simple agenda of me horny, me fucky, me hungry, me choo-choo. It likes keeping the biology ignorant of its reality, because frankly the biology wouldn't participate if it knew what it was actually engineering. There was a movie, with some kind of clone movie or whatever that was called, where they made these people so they could be used for body parts for other people. So you had a clone in a place, and you were going to use the clone if you had a car accident or something, and you needed new parts. Anyway, and you needed a kidney transplant or something. And then the clones are, working, okay, by, making chemistry to make more slaves, clones. And, it's a... you can get into things like that are just so insidious in terms of, the here it is very high tech, very, it has a lot of those things that look smart in it, but it's so fucking stupid, in terms of why don't you just stab yourself in the eye? The you're killing or harming or enslaving is just as alive as the you're trying to protect and preserve and all that. And it's just so, Well, anyway, those kind of narratives or stories can be used as a context to just realize that that's what we're involved in. And you don't want to be accidentally, okay, making the prison cell, okay, that you're going to be in tomorrow, that some version of you is going to be locked in. All right. So, good enough, I think. All right, so till the next time. And my mini-me camera broke, apparently. Figure out something. Anyway, so so till the next time when do more of this and such. It's a really important subject. You really can't get hysterical about it and wave my arms and all that kind of stuff, but I mean it really deserves that kind of thing. But unfortunately it just doesn't, that kind of thing just doesn't work with people. So you have to do these more subtle, infecting of their existence with thoughts that might, in a year or two, give them some reflection, some pause, some, yes, that is true, that this might be the part that guy was talking about where you're paying way too high a price for way too trivial accomplishment. All right, that kind of thing. Anyway, something like that. So till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. I mean, what has to change here is the rate of people being exposed to the idea. Not the the same people showing up just to have me reinforce and or just sympathetically acknowledge what they're feeling and thinking. Obviously it needs to be exposed to people who should be changed by it. And most of the people I'm talking to don't need changing. So that's unfortunate. But we'll see if we can do something about it. We'll see. We're still writing the story, right? So see what happens and see how much time we have and see what we're able to accomplish, blah, 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 blah. So till the next edition of whatever this trench warfare is kind of thing, and such, and so forth and whatnot.